Jake Morrison adjusted his tie and looked into the camera. The lights were bright in the studio on Luna Station, but he had done this thousands of times before. His show, Galactic Perspectives, reached every human world across the galaxy. Tonight would be different, though. Tonight he planned to say something that needed to be said. The red light came on. Jake smiled his practice smile. "Good evening. I'm Jake Morrison, and this is Galactic Perspectives, coming to you live from Luna Station. Tonight we're talking about humanity's place in the galaxy. Are we ready for what's out there? Should we slow down our expansion? These are hard questions, but someone needs to ask them." His guest tonight was Commander Lisa Chun from the Earth Defense Force. She sat across from him in her crisp blue uniform. Her medals caught the studio lights as she shifted in her chair. "Commander Chun, thank you for being here tonight," Jake said. "Thank you for having me, Jake," Lisa replied. Her voice was steady and professional. Jake leaned forward. "Commander, in the past 50 years, humanity has established colonies on 47 worlds. We've built cities on planets we barely understand. We've encountered alien ruins and artifacts. Don't you think we're moving too fast?" Lisa's eyes narrowed slightly. "Jake, every colony represents human courage and determination. Our pioneers are heroes. They're building the future." "But at what cost?" Jake pressed. "We've had 3 colonial disasters this year alone. The mining accident on Kepler-7 killed 200 people. The storm on New Texas wiped out an entire settlement. Maybe we need to slow down and think about what we're doing." In the control room, producer Amy Rodriguez watched the monitors carefully. She had been pushing Jake to take this position for months. The network executives on Earth were getting nervous about colonial expansion costs. This show could help change public opinion. Lisa Chun sat up straighter. "Jake, those colonists knew the risks. They went anyway because that's what humans do. We explore, we build. We don't give up when things get hard. But should we?" Jake asked. "Commander, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Maybe we're not ready for true galactic citizenship. Maybe we should consider limiting our expansion until we evolve beyond our primitive tribal instincts." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Lisa Chun stared at him. Her mouth opened, but no words came out at first. Finally, she found her voice. "Did you just call humanity primitive?" she asked quietly. Jake realized he had gone further than he planned, but it was too late to stop now. "Lisa, look at our history. Wars, violence, competition for resources. Even now, the colonies fight with Earth over trade agreements. We can't even get along with ourselves. How can we expect to join a galactic community?" Across human space, people stopped what they were doing to watch. In bars on frontier worlds, miners and farmers stared at their screens in disbelief. In the offices of Earth, politicians and bureaucrats leaned forward in their chairs. On military bases, soldiers looked at each other with growing anger. Lisa Chun's face had turned red. "Jake, those primitive humans you're talking about just built a faster-than-light communication network that connects 47 worlds. Those tribal colonists saved an entire alien refugee ship last month when their government wouldn't help them." "Isolated incidents," Jake said, waving his hand dismissively. "The bigger picture shows a species that's still learning to walk, trying to run with the galactic powers." Amy Rodriguez smiled in the control room. This was going exactly as planned. The Earth government would love this. It gave them perfect justification to cut colonial funding and bring the outer worlds back under tighter control. Lisa Chun stood up from her chair. "I can't sit here and listen to this anymore." "Commander, please," Jake said. "We need to have this conversation. Someone has to say what everyone is thinking." "Nobody is thinking that except you and whoever put you up to this," Lisa shot back. She pulled off her microphone and threw it on the desk. "You want to know what's primitive? Giving up, quitting, telling people they're not good enough to reach for the stars. She walked off the set. Jake turned back to the camera, trying to regain control of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for that outburst. But this proves my point exactly. We're still too emotional, too reactive for galactic society. What Jake didn't know was that his broadcast was being monitored by more than just humans. Deep in space, alien listening posts had been tracking human communications. For decades, the hegemony, a confederation of 12 alien species, had been debating what to do about the rapidly expanding human colonies. On the bridge of the hegemony flagship, Ambassador Zefkar watched Jake's broadcast with great interest. His reptilian features showed satisfaction as he listened to the human's words. Finally, Zefkar hissed to his aide. One of them admits what we have been saying all along. They are not ready. The aide, a tall blue-skinned creature, nodded agreement. Should we proceed with containment protocols, Ambassador? Not yet, Zefkar replied, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. Let us see how their own kind respond to this truth. If they agree with this Morrison human, perhaps we can avoid the unpleasantness of forced quarantine. Back on Luna Station, Jake continued his show alone. He spent the next hour explaining his position, calling for responsible expansion and careful consideration of humanity's readiness for galactic society. He used phrases like mature reflection and evolutionary preparation. What he didn't realize was that with every word, he was making things worse. On the frontier world of Kepler Colony, former actor Ben Mitchell sat in his governor's office watching the broadcast. His weathered face showed no expression, but his hands slowly clenched into fists. Mitchell had been one of Earth's biggest movie stars before giving up fame to help build humanity's future among the stars. He had seen what humans could accomplish when they worked together. He had watched ordinary people do extraordinary things every single day. And now some talk show host was telling the galaxy that humanity wasn't good enough. Mitchell reached for his communication device. It was time to call an emergency session of the Colonial Council. Jake Morrison had just declared that humanity should know its place. Ben Mitchell was about to show him exactly what that place was. Ambassador Zefkar stood on the bridge of his massive ship as it moved through space toward Earth. The vessel was 3 times larger than any human warship, its dark metal hull covered in strange symbols that glowed with purple light. Behind him, 11 other ships from different alien species followed in formation. How long until we reach the human homeworld? Zefkar asked his navigation officer. 6 hours, Ambassador, the officer replied. Their orbital stations are already detecting our approach. Zefkar's yellow eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Excellent. Have they responded to our messages? Not yet, sir. But their military ships are moving into defensive positions. The ambassadors' forked tongue flicked out. Of course they are. Violence is always their first thought. This Morrison human spoke the truth about his kind. On Earth's primary orbital defense station, Captain Ryan Blake watched the approaching alien fleet with growing concern. He had been a military officer for 20 years, but he had never seen ships like these. They moved with purpose, ignoring all attempts at communication. Sir, we're receiving a message, his communications officer announced. Put it through, Blake ordered. The main screen flickered and Ambassador Zefkar's reptilian face appeared. His skin was dark green with lighter patches around his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was cold and precise. Humans of Earth, I am Ambassador Zefkar of the Hegemony. We have been watching your species for many years. We have seen your violence, your greed, your endless conflicts. We have debated what to do about your rapid expansion across the galaxy. Captain Blake felt a chill run down his spine. This is Captain Blake of the Earth Defense Force. State your intentions. Zefkar's mouth curved in what might have been a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. Your intentions are already clear, Captain. You move your warships into position even as we speak. You think first of fighting, not talking. This proves what we have long suspected. We're defending our home, Blake said firmly. Any species would do the same. Perhaps, Zethkar replied. But last night, one of your own finally spoke the truth. This Morrison human admitted what we have been saying for decades. Your species is not ready for galactic society. You are too primitive, too dangerous to be allowed unrestricted expansion. On the surface of Earth, in the Emergency Command Center, President Laura Martinez watched the alien broadcast with her military advisors. General Chris Anderson, head of the Joint Chiefs, stood beside her with his arms crossed. Madam President, our fleets are ready, Anderson said quietly. We have 200 ships within range of Earth, against 12 alien vessels. Martinez asked, We don't know their capabilities, Anderson admitted. But we can't let them threaten Earth. Martinez shook her head. Let's hear what they want first. On the screen, Zethkar continued speaking. The hegemony represents 12 species who have achieved true civilization. We have moved beyond the primitive drives that still control your kind. We have learned to live in peace, to share resources, to settle disputes without violence. Captain Blake couldn't stay quiet. If you're so peaceful, why are you here with a fleet of warships? Zethkar's eyes narrowed. Sometimes, Captain, the mature must protect the young from their own destructive impulses. A parent restrains a child who plays with fire. Are you calling us children? Blake demanded. I am calling you what you are, Zethkar replied. An immature species that has gained access to dangerous technology before developing the wisdom to use it responsibly. Across human space, the alien broadcast was being received on every world, every station, every ship. The reaction was immediate and angry. On the mining world of New Colorado, workers stopped their shifts to watch. On the agricultural planet of Green Valley, farmers gathered in their local centers. This is Mary Kim reporting from the colonial world of Frontier Station, a news reporter announced. Citizens here are gathering to watch the alien ultimatum. The mood is tense but defiant. Senator Patricia Woods, who chaired the Colonial Affairs Committee, was on her way to an emergency session when the broadcast began. She watched from her transport ship as it raced toward Earth. This is exactly what we feared, she told her aide. First contact with a hostile species. Are they hostile, Senator? Her aide asked. They're threatening to limit human expansion, Woods replied. How? Is that not hostile? Back on Zethkar's ship, the ambassador was reaching the climax of his message. Humans of Earth and the colonies, the hegemony offers you a choice. You have 72 hours to prove that your species deserves its place among the civilized worlds of the galaxy. Prove it how? Captain Blake asked. Show us that you can move beyond your primitive nature, Zethkar said. Show us that you can work together instead of fighting. Show us that you can put the good of all above the desires of the few. Show us that you have evolved beyond the tribal violence that has marked your entire history. President Martinez stepped forward. And if we refuse? Zethkar's smile grew wider. Then we will do what we must to protect the galaxy from your kind. Your expansion will be contained. Your ships will be restricted to the worlds you already occupy. You will be quarantined until you mature enough to join galactic society. You're threatening to imprison our entire species, General Anderson said, his voice hard with anger. We prefer to think of it as protective custody, Zethkar replied. You would not give a loaded weapon to a child. We cannot allow a violent species unlimited access to the galaxy. The alien ambassador leaned forward. 72 hours, humans. Use them wisely. We will be watching to see if your Morrison human was correct about your limitations. The transmission ended, leaving the humans staring at blank screens. Captain Blake turned to his crew. Get me a direct line to Earth Command and contact all colonial governors. They need to know what we're facing. On the surface, President Martinez stood in stunned silence. Finally, she spoke. General, what are our options? Anderson's face was grim. We could fight, but against unknown alien technology? The casualties would be enormous. And if we don't fight, Martinez asked, then we become prisoners in our own star system. Anderson replied. Senator Woods arrived at the emergency session as the debate was beginning. This is a disaster, she announced. That fool Morrison has given them the perfect excuse to attack us. He didn't attack us, said another senator. He just said what some people were thinking. And now the aliens think we agree with him. Woods shot back. They think we're primitive because one of our own said we were. Meanwhile, on distant Kepler colony, Ben Mitchell was watching the alien ultimatum with growing determination. The former actor had seen enough. Jake Morrison had painted humanity as weak and divided. Now aliens were using those words to justify threatening the entire human race. Mitchell reached for his communication device. It was time to call the Colonial Council to emergency session. If Earth's politicians couldn't handle this crisis then, the colonies would have to act. But first, he had something to say to his fellow humans. Something that Jake Morrison should have said instead of apologizing for humanity's achievements. The clock was ticking. 72 hours to prove humanity's worth. Ben Mitchell intended to use every second. Ben Mitchell stood in his office on Kepler Colony, looking out at the bustling settlement below. The former movie star had traded Hollywood glamour for the rough life of a colonial governor 5 years ago. Now at 45, his face was weathered by alien suns and his hands were calloused from real work. His assistant, Maya Kim, rushed into the office with a data pad in her hands. Governor, the Colonial Council is ready for the emergency session. All 27 worlds are connected. Ben nodded and straightened his simple work shirt. No fancy suits here, just practical clothes for practical people. Put them through, Maya. The large screen on his wall flickered to life, showing 26 other colonial governors from across human space. These were the leaders who had actually built humanity's future among the stars. Miners, farmers, engineers, and soldiers who had left comfortable lives on Earth to create something new. Ladies and gentlemen, Ben began, his voice calm but firm. I assume you all watched the alien ultimatum. Governor Sarah Martinez from New Colorado spoke first. Ben, this is a disaster. They're using Morrison's words against all of us. That talk show host has painted us as primitive children waiting for alien parents to take care of us, added Governor Tom Wilson from Frontier Station. Ben held up his hand for silence. That's exactly why I called this meeting. Morrison doesn't speak for humanity, and neither do the politicians on Earth who are probably panicking right now. Dr. Alex Chun, the governor of Science Station Alpha, leaned forward on her screen. Ben, what are you thinking? We have 72 hours to prove ourselves to these aliens. No, Ben said firmly. We have 72 hours to remind ourselves who we really are. The other governors looked confused. Ben walked closer to the screen, his presence filling the room even through the digital connection. 5 years ago, I was making movies about heroes, Ben said. Fictional characters who saved the day through courage and determination. But you know what I learned when I came out here? Real heroes don't need scripts. They just need to be themselves. Governor Martinez frowned. Ben, this isn't a movie. These aliens have superior technology, and they're threatening to imprison our entire species. Sarah, how many people died in the mining accident on New Colorado last month? Ben asked. Martinez looked surprised by the question. 12 miners were trapped in a cave-in. And how many survived because your people didn't give up? Ben pressed. All of them, Martinez said quietly. We dug for 6 days straight. Tom Tell me about the storm on Frontier Station, Ben said, turning to Governor Wilson. Wilson's face softened. Category 5 hurricane. Winds over 200 miles per hour. We evacuated 8,000 people in 12 hours. Any casualties? Ben asked. None, Wilson replied. Everyone worked together. Even the kids helped carry supplies. Ben smiled. Dr. Chun, your research station discovered a cure for Martian flu last year. How long did it take? 6 months, Chen said. We worked around the clock. And you shared it freely with every human world, no profit required, Ben added. Of course, Chen said. People were dying. Ben spread his arms wide. Don't you see, this is who we are. We save each other. We work together. We never give up. Morrison called us primitive, but what's primitive about risking your life to save strangers? The governors began to look more hopeful. Ben could see understanding dawning in their eyes. The aliens want us to prove we're civilized, Ben continued. They want us to show that we can work together instead of fighting. That we can put the good of all above the desires of the few. That we've evolved beyond tribal violence. Governor Martinez nodded slowly. And you think we can do that? Sarah, we've been doing it for 50 years, Ben said. Every colony out here exists because people left everything behind to build something better. Every time disaster strikes, we help each other. Every breakthrough gets shared with everyone. Colonel Maria Santos, the military governor of defense. Station Beta spoke up. Ben, that's all true. But Earth doesn't see it that way. They think we're just profit-seeking settlers. Then we show them differently, Ben said. We show everyone. Earth, the colonies, and especially these aliens who think they can judge us. Ben walked to his window and looked out at the settlement. Children were playing in the streets while their parents worked in the fields and workshops. It was a simple life, but it was honest and good. I'm going to make a broadcast, Ben announced. To every human world, every station, every ship. Morrison had his chance to speak for humanity. Now it's our turn. Dr. Chun leaned forward. What are you going to say? Ben turned back to the screen. The truth. That we're not primitive children waiting for alien approval. We're humans, and we've earned our place in this galaxy through blood, sweat, and determination. The Earth government won't like that, Governor Wilson warned. The Earth government got us into this mess by letting Morrison speak for all of us, Ben replied. They can worry about their own problems. We'll handle ours. Maya Kim stepped forward. Governor, the broadcast network is ready. We can reach every human settlement within the hour, Ben nodded. Set it up. And Maya, make sure it's an open channel. I want everyone to hear this, including our alien friends. 20 minutes later, Ben Mitchell stood in the small broadcast studio that Kepler Colony used for emergency communications. The room was simple, nothing like the fancy studios on Earth or Luna Station. But it was real, and that was what mattered. Maya gave him the signal. Red lights indicated they were broadcasting to 47 worlds and hundreds of space stations. And ships. My fellow humans, Ben began, his voice carrying the same quiet strength that had made him a beloved actor. My name is Ben Mitchell, and I'm the governor of Kepler Colony. I'm speaking to you from the edge of human space, where ordinary people do extraordinary things every day. He paused, letting his words sink in. A few hours ago, we were given an ultimatum by alien visitors. They want us to prove that we deserve our place in the galaxy. They think we're primitive, violent, and divided. They've been listening to voices like Jake Morrison who tell us we're not good enough. Ben's voice grew stronger. But I've lived among you for 5 years now. I've seen what humans can really do when we work together. I've watched miners risk their lives to save strangers. I've seen farmers share their crops during famines. I've watched scientists give away life-saving discoveries for free. On worlds across human space, people stopped what they were doing to listen. In bars and workshops, in homes and offices, humans gathered around screens to hear what the former movie star had to say. The aliens want to see if we're civilized, Ben continued. They want to know if we can work together, if we can put others before ourselves, if we've evolved beyond primitive violence. He smiled, and somehow that smile carried across the vast distances between worlds. Well, I have news for them. We've been doing all of that for 50 years. And we're just getting started. Ben Mitchell's broadcast continued to echo across human space. His words had reached every corner of the 47 worlds, and something remarkable was happening. Humans were responding. On the mining world of New Colorado, Governor Sarah Martinez watched as her people organized themselves without being asked. The miners who had worked 16-hour shifts were now volunteering for emergency response teams. Their leader, a tough woman named Kate Thompson, stood before a crowd of 300 volunteers. "We heard what Governor Mitchell said," Kate announced. To the gathered miners, "We've been proving ourselves for years. Now it's time to show the galaxy what we can do." She pointed to a large screen showing the alien fleet still positioned near Earth. "Those aliens think we're primitive. They think we only know how to fight and compete. Let's show them something different." Within hours, the miners had organized supply runs to 3 neighboring worlds that were struggling with equipment failures. They loaded their fastest ships with spare parts and technical experts, asking for nothing in return. "We don't need alien approval," Kate told the news reporter covering the story. "We just need to be ourselves." On the agricultural world of Green Valley, Dr. Sam Parker was working in his laboratory when Ben Mitchell's broadcast reached him. Sam was a quantum physicist who had left Earth's universities to study unique energy patterns found only on colony worlds. His research had been purely theoretical until now. "Maya, come look at this," Sam called to his assistant. "If I combine the quantum readings from the Kepler system with the energy patterns we found on New Colorado, I think I can create a breakthrough in faster-than-light communication." Maya Rodriguez, a young engineer who had helped design the colony's communication systems, looked at Sam's calculations. "Dr. Parker, this would let us talk to any human world instantly with no delays." "Exactly," Sam said, his excitement growing. "But I need data from at least 12 different worlds to make it work." Within 6 hours of Sam's request being broadcast, he had responses from 15 worlds. Scientists, engineers, and even amateur researchers were sharing their data freely. No one asked for credit or payment. They just wanted to help. On the frontier world of Kepler Colony, Ben Mitchell was watching the responses to his broadcast with amazement. His communication officer, Tony Martinez, was struggling to keep up with all the incoming messages. "Governor, we're getting reports from every world," Tony said. "People are organizing relief missions, sharing resources, starting collaborative projects." "It's like nothing I've ever seen," Ben smiled. "It's like everything I've always seen out here. The aliens just gave us a reason to show it to everyone at once." On Luna Station, Jake Morrison was watching the same reports from his apartment. The talk show host had been suspended pending an investigation, but he could still access the news feeds. What he saw made him feel sick. "They're making me look like a fool," he muttered to his empty apartment. "All this cooperation and unity. It's not real. It's just a show for the aliens." But even as Jake tried to convince himself, he could see that the responses were genuine. These weren't staged events for the cameras. They were real people doing real work to help each other. On the science station orbiting Mars, 19-year-old Maya Kim was organizing something unprecedented. Maya was a student researcher, but she had an idea that could change everything. "We need to show the aliens that humans aren't just good at helping each other," Maya announced to her fellow students. "We need to show them that we help everyone, even strangers." Maya had remembered something from the news reports 6 months ago. An alien refugee ship had been attacked by space pirates near the edge of human space. The ship was damaged and drifting. But the alien government had refused to send help because the refugees were from a different species. The refugee ship is still out there, Maya told her team. Their government abandoned them because they're not the same species, but we could help them. Maya's professor, Dr. Nina Foster, tried to talk her out of it. Maya, that's outside human space. It's dangerous, and we don't even know if they're still alive. That's exactly why we need to try, Maya said. If we're going to prove we're civilized, we need to show that we help people even when there's nothing in it for us. Maya's plan was simple but dangerous. She would take a small rescue ship with medical supplies and repair equipment to the refugee vessel. If the aliens were still alive, she would help them. If not, at least humanity would have tried. The story of Maya's mission spread across human space in hours. Other young people volunteered to join her. Engineers offered equipment. Doctors provided medical supplies. Within a day, Maya had enough volunteers and resources for a full rescue mission. Admiral Kate Thompson, who commanded the Colonial Defense Fleet, watched Maya's preparations with growing respect. That kid has more courage than most of my experienced officers, she told her staff. But it wasn't just Maya's mission that impressed the admiral. Across human space, similar acts of courage and cooperation were happening everywhere. The aliens had given humanity 72 hours to prove themselves. Humans were using every minute. On the industrial world of New Detroit, workers were designing new life support systems for struggling colonies. They worked around the clock, sharing designs freely with anyone who needed them. On the research station at Alpha Centauri, scientists were collaborating on projects that had been competing for years. They pooled their resources and knowledge, creating breakthroughs that would have taken decades working alone. Even on Earth, the response was building. Despite the government's panic and confusion, ordinary people were organizing themselves. Teachers were creating educational exchanges between Earth and the colonies. Artists were collaborating on work celebrating human achievement. Engineers were designing new technologies to help both Earth and the colonies. Dr. Sam Parker's communication breakthrough was the most dramatic example. Within 48 hours of starting his project, he had created a network that connected all 47 human worlds with instant communication. The breakthrough required cooperation from hundreds of scientists and engineers across dozens of worlds. We've just created something that most alien species take centuries to develop, Sam announced in his broadcast to the colonies. We did it in 2 days because we worked together. On Zethkar's flagship, the alien ambassador watched the human response with growing surprise. His aide, a tall blue-skinned creature named Vex, was monitoring human communications. Ambassador, their response is not what we expected, Vex reported. They are not fighting among themselves. They are not competing for resources. They are working together. Zethkar's forked tongue flicked out nervously. It must be temporary. Fear makes even primitive species cooperate briefly. Sir, some of their achievements in the past 2 days are remarkable, Vex continued. This quantum communication network, the rescue mission to the Centauri refugees, the resource sharing between worlds, these are the actions of a mature species. Zethkar refused to believe it. One human called them primitive. Morrison spoke the truth about his kind. But Ambassador, what if Morrison was wrong? Vex asked quietly. On Kepler Colony, Ben Mitchell was preparing for his next broadcast. The former actor had become the unofficial voice of human response to the alien ultimatum. He had been watching the reports from across human space with pride and amazement. Governor, you need to see this, Maya Kim said, rushing into his office with a data pad. Maya Kim's rescue mission just reached the alien refugee ship. They're alive and she's helping them. Ben smiled. And the aliens watching our response? They're still monitoring everything, Maya replied. But I think they're starting to realize they made a mistake, Ben nodded. Good, because I'm about to make sure they understand exactly what kind of mistake they made. Director Paul Wong sat in his office at the Terran Broadcasting Network, staring at the reports flooding his screens. The network's Luna Station headquarters had been receiving angry messages from across human space for the past 60 hours. Jake Morrison's show had become the most hated program in human history. "Sir, we've lost 90% of our colonial viewership," his assistant reported nervously. "The advertisers are pulling out. 23 worlds have banned our broadcasts." "Entirely," Paul rubbed his temples. The network executives on Earth had pushed Jake to take a more critical stance on colonial expansion. They thought it would help control costs and bring the outer worlds back under Earth's authority. Instead, it had backfired spectacularly. "What about Morrison?" Paul asked. "He's locked himself in his apartment," the assistant replied. "He won't take calls or respond to messages. The security team says he's been watching the news feeds constantly." Paul made his decision. "Draft a termination letter. Jake Morrison is finished." In his apartment on Luna Station, Jake Morrison sat in his chair watching the latest reports from Maya Kin's rescue mission. The 19-year-old had successfully saved the alien refugees and was now escorting them to safety. The rescued aliens were praising human courage and generosity in interviews that were being broadcast across the galaxy. "This is just emotional manipulation," Jake muttered to himself. "One rescue mission doesn't change what humans really are." But even Jake couldn't ignore the broader pattern. In the past 60 hours, humans had achieved more cooperation and unity than most species managed in decades. The quantum communication network was already connecting distant colonies that had never been able to talk to each other before. Resource sharing had eliminated shortages on 12 worlds. Scientific breakthroughs were happening daily as researchers shared data freely. Jake's communication device buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Director Wong. "Jake, we need to talk. Report to my office immediately." Jake knew what was coming. His career was over. But maybe that was for the best. He had started to doubt his own words as he watched humanity's response to the alien challenge. On Earth, President Laura Martinez was dealing with her own crisis. The Earth government's response to the alien ultimatum had been slow and bureaucratic, while the colonies had responded with immediate action and unity. "Madam President, the Colonial Council is requesting a meeting," General Chris Anderson reported. "They want to discuss joint response strategies." Martinez frowned. "They're trying to take over from Earth's leadership." "With respect, ma'am, they're already leading," Anderson replied. "Every major response to the alien ultimatum has come from the colonies. Ben Mitchell is speaking for humanity more effectively than we are." Senator Patricia Woods, who had been watching the proceedings, stepped forward. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. The colonies are using this crisis to declare independence from Earth." "Senator, maybe that's not such a bad thing," Anderson said quietly. Woods stared at him in shock. "General, you're talking about treason." "I'm talking about reality," Anderson replied. "The colonies have shown more leadership in 3 days than Earth has shown in 3 years. Meanwhile, on his flagship, Ambassador Zethkar was struggling with his own doubts. The hegemony had based their assessment of humanity on decades of monitoring Earth's communications. They had seen the wars, the conflicts, the competition for resources. Jake Morrison's broadcast had seemed to confirm everything they believed about human nature, but the response to their ultimatum had been completely unexpected. "Ambassador, the human rescue mission has successfully saved the Zentari refugees," his aide Vex reported. "The refugees are calling humans heroes and demanding that their government apologize for abandoning them." Zethkar's scales darkened with frustration. "One rescue mission proves nothing." "Sir, it's not just one mission," Vex continued. In the past 72 hours, humans have demonstrated technological breakthroughs, interworld cooperation, resource sharing without profit motives, and willingness to help non-human species. These are the hallmarks of a mature civilization. The Morrison human spoke the truth about his kind, Zethkar insisted. What if Morrison was wrong? Vex asked. What if he represented only a small minority of human opinion? Before Zethkar could answer, another aide approached. Ambassador, we're receiving a transmission from the human colony world of Kepler. Governor Mitchell is requesting to speak with you directly. Zethkar's tongue flicked out nervously. Put him through. The main screen activated, showing Ben Mitchell standing in his simple office on Kepler colony. The former actor looked calm and confident, nothing like the panicked Earth politicians Zethkar had expected to deal with. Ambassador Zethkar, Ben said with a slight nod. I'm Ben Mitchell, speaking for the United Colonial Council. I know who you are, Mitchell, Zethkar replied. What do you want? I want to discuss your 72-hour ultimatum, Ben said. And I want a challenge. The assumptions you've made about humanity. Zethkar's eyes narrowed. Your Morrison human already told us what we needed to know about your species, Ben smiled. Ambassador Jake Morrison doesn't speak for humanity. He never did. Would you judge your entire species based on the words of one individual who had never left his home world? Morrison broadcast to all human worlds, Zethkar pointed out. And all human worlds rejected his message, Ben replied. The proof is in what you've seen over the past 3 days. Morrison said we were primitive and divided. What have you actually observed? Zethkar was silent for a moment. Vex whispered in his ear, reminding him of the human achievements they had monitored. We have seen ... Unexpected cooperation, Zethkar admitted. You've seen who we really are, Ben said. Ambassador, I propose a challenge. Instead of judging humanity based on Jake Morrison's pessimism, why don't you judge us based on our actions? What kind of challenge? Zethkar asked. A debate, Ben said. Me versus Morrison. Broadcast live to every human world and every ship. In your fleet. Let your people hear both sides of the human story. Zethkar considered the proposal. The hegemony prided itself on fairness and thorough evaluation. And if Morrison proves his point about human nature, then you'll have justification for your quarantine, Ben replied. But if I prove mine, you'll reconsider your assessment of humanity. And if we reconsider, Zethkar asked, then we talk about partnership instead of containment, Ben said. The galaxy is big enough for all of us, Ambassador. But we won't be treated like children who need alien supervision. On Luna Station, Jake Morrison received the message about the proposed debate with growing dread. Director Wong had already fired him, but now they wanted him to defend his position against Ben Mitchell in front of the entire galaxy. I won't do it, Jake told Wong over the communication link. I've already lost my career. I won't lose my dignity too. Jake, this isn't about your career anymore, Wong replied. This is about humanity's future. You started this mess with your broadcast. Now you need to help clean it up. By humiliating myself in front of billions of people? Jake asked. By admitting you were wrong, Wong said firmly. Jake, have you been watching the news? Humans have accomplished incredible things in the past 3 days. Maybe it's time to admit that your view of humanity was too pessimistic. Jake stared at his screens showing the reports from across human space. The rescue missions, the scientific breakthroughs, the spontaneous cooperation between worlds that had never worked together before. All of it had happened because humans chose to prove themselves rather than accept his defeatist message. Fine, Jake said finally. I'll do the debate. But don't expect me to make it easy for Mitchell. I wouldn't want you to, Wong replied. This needs to be real. On Kepler Colony, Ben Mitchell was preparing for the most important speech of his life. Not as an actor reading someone else's words, but as a human being defending his entire species. Maya Kim knocked on his office door. "Governor, the debate is set for tomorrow. Every human world will be watching, and the aliens have agreed to broadcast it to their fleet." Ben nodded. "Maya, do you think we've done enough to prove ourselves?" "Sir, we've done amazing things," Maya replied. "But I think the real test is whether we can show the aliens that Jake Morrison's pessimism isn't who we are." Ben smiled. "Then I guess it's time to have that conversation." The broadcast studio on Luna Station had never hosted anything as important as this debate. Representatives from 47 human worlds filled the observation area, while alien ships monitored from space. Jake Morrison sat across from Ben Mitchell. Both men knowing that the future of humanity hung in the balance, director Paul Wong stepped forward to address the cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen, across human space and beyond, this is a historic moment. Two men, two visions of humanity, will now present their cases to the galaxy." Jake Morrison looked nervous under the bright lights. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by the weight of what his words had caused. Ben Mitchell sat calmly, wearing his simple work clothes, looking like exactly what he was, a man who had built something with his own hands. "Jake Morrison," Wong announced. "You may present your case first." Jake cleared his throat and looked into the camera. 3 days ago, I said that humanity might not be ready for true galactic citizenship. I said we should consider limiting our expansion until we evolved beyond our primitive instincts." He paused, glancing at Ben Mitchell before continuing. "I've been watching the reports from across human space for the past 72 hours. I've seen the rescue missions, the scientific breakthroughs, the cooperation between worlds. And I have to ask myself, was I wrong?" The admission sent shockwaves across human space. In bars and homes, people leaned forward to hear what Jake would say next. "I thought I was being thoughtful and realistic," Jake continued. "I thought someone needed to point out humanity's flaws before we embarrassed ourselves in front of advanced alien civilizations, but maybe I was the one who embarrassed us." On Ambassador Zethkar's ship, the alien leader watched with growing interest. This was not what he had expected from the human who had validated the hegemony's concerns. "I stand by my observation that humans can be violent and tribal," Jake said. "Our history proves that. But maybe I focus too much on our past and not enough on our potential." Ben Mitchell remained silent, letting Jake speak his piece. "The truth is," Jake continued, "I've spent my entire career on Earth and Luna Station. I've never lived on a colony world. I've never seen ordinary people risk everything to build something new. I judged humanity based on politicians and news reports, not on the people actually living among the stars." Jake looked directly at Ben. "Mitchell, Governor Mitchell asked me once if I would judge an entire species based on one individual who had never left his home world. The answer is no. And maybe humanity shouldn't be judged based on someone like me either." Ben Mitchell nodded respectfully as Jake finished speaking. Then he stood up and walked to the center of the studio. "Thank you, Jake," Ben said simply. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong." He turned to face the camera, his presence filling the room even though he spoke quietly. "Ambassador Zethkar, members of the hegemony, my fellow humans, Jake Morrison asked an important question. Are we ready for galactic citizenship? Let me answer that." Ben's voice grew stronger as he continued. 72 hours ago, you challenged us to prove we could work together instead of fighting. In 3 days, we've created a communication network that connects 47 worlds instantly. We've organized relief missions to help struggling colonies. We've shared scientific breakthroughs freely with anyone who needed them. On Kepler Colony, Maya Kim watched with pride as her governor spoke for all humanity. You wanted to see if we could put the good of all above the desires of the few, Ben continued. A 19-year-old named Maya Kim risked her life to save alien refugees that their own government had abandoned. Miners on New Colorado sent supplies to 3 different worlds without asking for payment. Scientists across human space shared decades of research in a matter of hours. Ambassador Zethkar shifted uncomfortably in his command chair as Ben's words reached his ship. "You asked if we had evolved beyond tribal violence," Ben said. "Well, here's your answer. When faced with the threat of galactic quarantine, humanity didn't turn to violence. We didn't blame each other or fight among ourselves. We proved ourselves through cooperation, courage, and compassion." Ben walked closer to the camera. "But I want to tell you something else, Ambassador. We didn't do any of this to impress you. We did it because that's who we are. The rescue missions, the scientific breakthroughs, the help for struggling colonies, that happens every day in human space. You just gave us a reason to show the galaxy what we've been doing all along." On Earth, President Laura Martinez watched the debate with growing realization. The colonies hadn't just responded to the alien crisis. They had shown Earth what real leadership looked like. "Jake Morrison called us primitive," Ben continued. "But what's primitive about building cities on hostile worlds? What's primitive about sharing life-saving medicine freely? What's primitive about risking your life to save strangers?" Ben's voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had actually lived the life he was describing. "Ambassador Zethkar, you came here to judge humanity. But maybe the real question isn't whether we're ready for galactic society. Maybe the question is whether galactic society is ready for us." The studio fell silent. Across human space, millions of people held their breath. "We don't ask permission to reach for the stars," Ben said. "We don't wait for alien approval to help each other. We don't need the hegemony's permission to be who we are." He looked directly into the camera, as if he could see through it to the alien ships watching. "Ambassador, you can try to quarantine us. You can try to limit our expansion. But you can't stop the human spirit. And maybe, just maybe, that spirit is exactly what the galaxy needs." On Zethkar's flagship, the alien ambassador sat in stunned silence. His aide Vex leaned forward. "Ambassador, their response has exceeded every measure of civilized behavior. In the hegemony's protocols." Zethkar's tongue flicked out nervously. Morrison spoke of primitive instincts. "Morrison was wrong," Vex said firmly. "The evidence is clear. This species has achieved in 3 days what most civilizations take decades to accomplish." Zethkar stood up slowly. "Open a channel to all ships. And to the human worlds." Moments later, his reptilian face appeared on screens across human space. "Humans of Earth and the colonies," Zethkar began, his voice formal but respectful. "The hegemony has observed your response to our ... challenge. We came here believing you were a primitive species requiring guidance or containment." He paused, his scales shifting color in what humans would learn was a sign of embarrassment in his species. "We were wrong. Your actions over the past 72 hours have demonstrated wisdom, cooperation, and compassion that exceeds the standards of many hegemony member species." On Luna Station, Jake Morrison watched the alien admission with a mixture of relief and shame. "The quarantine order is hereby rescinded," Zethkar announced. "Furthermore, the hegemony wishes to open formal diplomatic relations with humanity. We believe your species has much to offer galactic civilization." Across human space, cheers erupted in homes, bars, and public squares. "There is one condition," Zethkar added. "We request that Governor Ben Mitchell serve as humanity's first ambassador to the hegemony." Ben Mitchell smiled. "Ambassador Zethkar, it would be my honor, but I have one condition of my own." "Name it," Zethkar replied. "The colonies and Earth work together as equal partners," Ben said. "No more treating the outer worlds like Earth's property. We're all humans, and we all have a voice." President Martinez nodded slowly. The crisis had taught Earth a valuable lesson about real leadership. Agreed, Zethkar said. Welcome to Galactic Society, humans. We look forward to learning from you. As the broadcast ended, Jake Morrison stood up and walked to Ben Mitchell. The two men shook hands. I'm sorry, Jake said quietly. I almost cost humanity its future. No, Ben replied. You gave us a chance to show who we really are. Sometimes the best way to prove yourself is to be challenged by doubt. 6 months later, the crisis became known throughout human space as the 72-Hour Awakening. Ben Mitchell stepped down as colonial governor to serve as humanity's ambassador to the hegemony. Jake Morrison left broadcasting and became a teacher on a frontier world, helping children understand the importance of believing in human potential. Maya Keem's rescue mission became a symbol of human compassion that inspired cooperation throughout the galaxy. Dr. Sam Parker's communication network revolutionized interstellar society. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, humans continued to reach for the stars, proving every day that they belonged among them.